National Geographic published a study on February 15th, 2009, and it absolutely amazed me because what they showed was the actual proof that identical creatures are appearing at the north and the south poles of our Earth and nowhere else. To be specific, this was called the International Census of Marine Life, and what they found in this census was that there were 235 identical species of creature that were found at the North and the South Pole, but nowhere else on Earth. Finding so many species inhabiting both poles startled the scientists, as National Geographic said. Among other species that were found on both poles included whales, worms, and crustaceans. Exactly where these species came from and how they ended up a world apart with comparatively warm oceans in between remains a mystery, the scientists said. And that's a direct quote from the article. So what they don't understand is that the field is creating these life forms. Some scientists actually tried to say that ships may have been taking in ballast, meaning water, to weigh them down at the North Pole, sailing to the South Pole, and then releasing the ballast, and that this is how the creatures went from pole to pole. Well, that was actually examined, and they found that there are no ships that are traveling that way that could account for this. What you're simply seeing is that the Earth has this energetic engine that's cranking out life forms at the poles by the same process, and those life forms only appear there and nowhere else. Well, if you look at this first picture, what you're seeing is called Limacina helicina. This is a creature that only appears at the pole, has a very unique and interesting structure. The bottom of it looks almost like it's a snail shell, but then the top of it appears to be some strange form of jellyfish. This next creature that you see here, again, only appears at the poles, has a very interesting, almost angelic look to it. The next creature here, again, looks like a crustacean, sort of like a shrimp, but you only see this creature appearing at the poles. And lastly, this guy very much looks like a shrimp, except you see he has these two huge arrows at the front of his face, obviously for some sort of defense to stab other creatures and have his own food supply. What we're seeing here is a really phenomenal effect because you can look at the work of Pacheco and see little marine organisms growing inside that beach sand that was heated to 1,000 degrees Celsius. But now we look at the Earth itself, and when we look at the poles, we're finding creatures that emerge there but nowhere else. To me, this is a phenomenal proof that what we're dealing with is, in fact, a source field, a life-generating energy field that will naturally take biological material in a given area and arrange it in such a way as to create life forms based on a design template. A design template, by the way, that is intelligently made.
And the idea of the conspiracy is to put people in a box to keep them from becoming that consciousness, not least by kidding them that they're not that consciousness and they're just their body. And it's not that these manipulators, reptilian or Illuminati in human form, are actually more powerful or anything than we are. They're not. They're in a box too. They're in a vibrational box because anyone that wishes to have power over others, anyone that can do things to people and have no empathy for the consequences, is themselves in a tiny box of perception. What the Illuminati and what the manipulators have done, and they've done it brilliantly, I have to say, because they may not be wise, but they are clever on an intellectual level. Cleverness without wisdom is the most destructive force on earth. That's why we are in such a state that we're in. You know, it's very clever to know how to build an atomic bomb, but it's not wise to do so. There is a difference between cleverness and wisdom. But on an intellectual level, they're very clever. And what they've done is manipulate humanity through the suppression of knowledge and these other means into a smaller box than they're in. But we have the potential to get out of the box. Well, they have the potential too, but far less potential because they're so caught in this mentality that they're in of control. And what is control? Control is massive, massive insecurity. That's what these people are, the Illuminati and these reptilian entities and all the rest. They are consumed by insecurity and fear themselves. That's why they know how to manipulate fear and insecurity so well, because they're connected to it so powerfully. People who are insecure want to control everything because they're not secure enough within themselves just to go with the flow of life and see where it goes. Secure people don't need control over other people. Insecure people do. And I use this analogy a lot because it really kind of encapsulates it for me. Our natural state is not what we have been experiencing in known human history anyway. Our natural state is where we're going, and more people are opening up to. And I use this analogy like the natural state of a ball is floating on the top of the water, floating on the top of the tank or whatever. To keep it in an unnatural state, you have to push it down to the bottom of the water. I mean, you can't let it go. You have to constantly hold it there. And that's why, as I've been describing today, and I could describe a lot more, we have been subjected to multi-levels of suppression and manipulation from the things we eat, the electromagnetic fields we come into contact with, the way that we're manipulated through words, etc., and religion and belief systems. All those things are necessary to hold us in an unnatural state of being unconscious. And why are all those things necessary? Because we are amazing, infinite, eternal genius. And we've been held in this unnatural state. But, like I say, if you're going to hold the ball in the unnatural state, you've got to hold it there. Because the moment you let it go, woof, it's in its natural state, because that's where it will gravitate to immediately. And the moment we throw off the chains and the shackles of this manipulation and of this misunderstanding of who we are and where we are, then as we break those chains, those vibrational chains, we are going to become conscious by definition, because that's what we are. You know, people think, I've got to seek enlightenment. No! We are enlightened. That's our natural state.
When you look at a marvelous mountain with the snow-capped, eternal snows, lying against the blue sky, for a second the immensity of that mountain drives away the self, the me, with all my problems, all my anxiety. That majesty of the great rocks and the beautiful, lovely valleys and the rivers. At that moment, second, the self is not. So the mountain has driven away the self. Like a toy with a child is quiet. So that mountain, that river, the depth of the blue valleys dispels for a second all your problems, all your vanities and anxieties. Then you see how beautiful that is. So is there beauty without being absorbed by something outside? That is there beauty? Or beauty is when the self is not. You understand it? Don't go to sleep, please.
The presence is, as I sometimes describe it, a spaciousness, a sense of space that surrounds whatever content there is in your life. Thoughts, emotions, sense perceptions or experiences, even sitting here and listening. The truth is not in the words. The words only point So don't accumulate the words. You can't take the truth home with you, nor do you need to, because you are the truth. So the words only point to that spaciousness that is inside you. In that spaciousness, and so that spaciousness you bring to every sense perception. That spaciousness is there, you don't really bring it, you realize it's already there. For example, when you look at something, let's say it's the flowers, when you look at something and there's no mental noise around it, there's simply this perception of that. I recommend that practice highly, to look at a flower in the state of such alertness, relaxed alertness, that you don't need to label it in any way. The first thing you notice when you do that is how still a flower is. And I'm sure you never noticed that before when you looked at it through the mind. The mind has no knowledge of stillness. The mind is noise. So when you look at a flower, an amazing thing happens. The first thing you feel, of course you see the beauty, there's the color, and there's the light shining through the petals. It's very beautiful. But you notice more than that. You notice that it is very still. And anything in nature, you suddenly notice that there is an essence beyond that which you see. It lives in a state of deep stillness. And when you notice that, what does that mean when I say now you notice that? It means at that moment, that deep stillness is there in you when you notice it in a flower, that the flower lives in that state. The noticing it is the arising in you of that state of stillness. And that is a state of great sacredness and aliveness and beauty, but deeper than the beauty of form. It is the formless that arises in you, the formless consciousness. So that is what I mean when I use the word spaciousness. Perhaps you didn't quite know what I meant. So we are gradually getting there. I'm giving you a few more pointers to what that means. There's a wake-up call. Nature here is so alive. All plants that have good karma come to California.